Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today we are looking at ILNP's first steps into fall with their upcoming The Estate collection. First off, I want to give a big thank you to ILNP for sponsoring this video. So while that means I'm being paid to swatch and share these with you all, my thoughts and opinions are still honest and my own. So The Estate collection is this 6-piece lineup of these deep, jewel-toned, crelly bases sprinkled with these copper metallic flakes and a dainty hollow sparkle, all inspired by the grandeur of historic estates in autumn. So as always, I will save some more information for the end of the video after comparisons. For now, let me just show you the swatches. The first shade we have is Stone Bridge, and this is described as a cool charcoal holographic jelly with warm copper metallic flakes. These all pretty much have the same kind of finish with the metallic copper flakes and the dainty hollow, so I'll be skipping that for the rest of the descriptions. But yeah, I would agree with how they describe the color on this one. As you can see, it is a deep charcoal color, super gorgeous, really pigmented as well on that first coat. I initially thought these were going to be their standard, pigmented jellies, but I think these are more crelly leaning because on 2 coats I could barely see through to my nail line. Maybe if you look close enough because my nails are a little bit longer now, but I would say overall these are very high coverage compared to their normal kind of squishy based flaky polishes, if that makes sense. I absolutely love this one. I don't normally go for a dark gray, but I love the copper flakes in this, the dainty hollow. It is just so gorgeous. The next shade we have is the Heir, and this is described as a regal sapphire with that same flaky mix. And this had another super pigmented formula. You can see it's in that jelly, crelly leaning family where it is a little bit sheer on that first coat. I also had a little bit of a bald spot on the center bottom of my nail, but overall the formula was really nice and easy to work with, and it built up to be practically fully opaque in just the 2 coats. This is another one I absolutely love. The color is just so incredibly stunning, especially in contrast with those copper flakes. It really is so regal. Next up we have First Edition, and this is described as a dark indigo with the same flaky mix. I definitely would agree with that color description. On the first coat, because it is a little bit more sheer, you can see more of that purple color coming through, but on the 2 coats it does build up to be a very true indigo where in some lighting it almost looks like a blue like the last shade. But I think for the most part it does read as a true indigo, having that more purple leaning quality to it. And as expected, this had the same formula and application as the last one. I found because these are such darker colors, it's just super easy to build them up in 2 coats, but if you happen to have longer nails or just prefer to paint in much thinner coats than I do, you might need a 3rd. Then we have Adaline, which is a cool burgundy with the same flaky mix. So even though this does still have that same super highly pigmented jelly kind of base, I did find this one to be a little bit lighter in color, or maybe slightly more sheer, or maybe more jelly leaning compared to the others being more crelly like. But again, it could just be the lightness of the color, because on 2 coats I feel like you could see a little hint of nail line, so this is one that I would maybe recommend 3 coats if you want that super high full coverage, like almost 100% opaque look, which is what you get with the other polishes, but just in 2 coats. But 2 coats for this one still built up really nicely. It has a lot of color, just giving that rich jewel tone kind of burgundy shade, very glassy and squishy. And yeah, hopefully you can see in my full hand swatch that you can just make out a little bit of that nail line coming through, but I definitely think it's still passable on the 2 coats even at my longer length. And the trade-off, I guess, is that in lower lighting, this one definitely still reads as a burgundy color, while the others are so dark they're almost black. Then we have Overgrown, and this is described as a deep hunter green. This is another one I absolutely loved. Oh my god, it is so gorgeous. Another fantastic formula, super highly pigmented, easy to work with, much more similar to the first couple of polishes. I really think just the burgundy is the odd one out in a way, because I almost forgot to mention even the flakes just looked a little different in Adaline compared to the rest of the polishes, where maybe they just had a more pinky color to them due to the base. Though I guess to be fair, to me, the flakes in this polish look a little bit more gold than copper. I'm assuming because, you know, they're sort of slightly tinted by the green. But either way, it is just such a beautiful shade. Definitely one I'm going to be super excited to wear in the fall. And rounding out the collection is Sloe Burn, which is described as a dark walnut brown. And surprise, surprise, this was another favorite of mine. I absolutely love brown polishes, especially for fall. And I feel like ILNP makes some of the best deep, sparkly browns, so this is easily a new favorite. As you can see, it had pretty much the same formula as the majority of the polishes, with the exception of Adaline, so it was super highly pigmented on the first coat, just really dark and saturated in color, and it built up to be fully opaque for me in 2 coats, especially this shade because it is so incredibly dark. Like in lower lighting, I would say this pretty much reads as black, but in every other lighting you can see it's a dark, rich brown. I love the slight warmth that this has, not only in the undertone of the polish, but again, because of those copper flakes, it just looks like kindling in a fire. Oh my gosh, it is so stunning. And here is my full hand swatch collage of the Estate collection. Again, worn in 2 coats each with a glossy top coat. Definitely some super dark colors in here. Again, with the exception of Adaline, I feel like that one's the most vibrant, but at least the others aren't so dark they look black. Now for comparisons, we're starting with Stonebridge, and I wanted to show this next to Thundercloud from the Overcast collection and Stormwatch from After the Rain, both of which are jelly bases with flaky polishes and a dainty holo. Thundercloud is a little closer in terms of being a darker gray base, but that one's a lot cooler toned, while Stormwatch has a sort of similar orange kind of flaky, but it's iridescent instead of a metallic. For other dark grays, I pulled out Rain, which is kind of a classic jelly base with a hollow flaky in there, so there's no metallic or iridescent sparkle. And I also wanted to see this next to Truffle, since that was just a darker gray, but that's a little bit too dark, almost bordering on black. But I figured I could recreate it with ILNP's Compass, which is their copper metallic topper. And it does look a little bit busy with China Glaze's Fairy Dust, but it's still somewhat close. And for more dark grays, I have Mooncat's Like a Moth to a Flame, which has been retired. That one is a deeper and more warm-toned gray base with a red copper shimmer as opposed to a flaky. So for a deep gray base with a copper kind of flake, I have Night Owl Lacquer's Windswept, which kind of looks a little closer, but it does have more shimmer in there, and the base is also warmer. And here is Stonebridge next to a swatch stick of Holo Taco's Nightlife from their Holo Renaissance collection last fall. It's a dark gray crushed holo, not as dark as Stonebridge though. Next for the Air, the darkest ILNP blues that I have were Drizzle from the After the Rain collection, which has that iridescent copper gold kind of flaky. I think the flakes in that are a bit larger, but the base color also has a slightly more peacock blue leaning color to it, while Set Sail almost looks more purple or indigo in comparison. And of course it's missing the copper flakes in that. So yeah, these are very different in their undertones. And for some blue jelly references, I pulled out Midnight Ink from the Thorns collection, as well as Crack's Sloe, which was from their most recent release. As I'm sure you're aware, the Thorns jellies are super, super dark, so I'm going to be showing the comparisons in one coat for the majority of those, just so you can see the actual color they're supposed to be, because on two coats they pretty much look black. And for some other deep blues, I pulled out Mooncat's Treachery in the blue, which is a thermal, but the cold state is still a little lighter in comparison to the Air. And I also pulled out Olive Ave's MOTN, which I thought would be closer. They looked a lot closer in the bottle, but on the nail, Middle of the Night looks a little bit dustier in comparison, but I figured I could still try to show a recreation attempt with the flaky and hollow on top. And it's not too bad. Again, my fairy dust just needs to be a little thinned out. And lastly, I have a photo comparison for Late Night from the Opening Night collection, which again featured these iridescent flakes instead of a metallic copper one, so the colors are going to be a little different there, but it's the closest to a deeper blue jelly. And here is the Air next to Holo Taco's Hit the Lights from their most recent anniversary collection, and Smalt of the Earth, which was the crushed holo from last year's fall collection. Both of the Holo Tacos I would consider blue, but they're slightly different shades of blue than the Air, though between them I would say Hit the Lights is a little closer because Smalt of the Earth almost has an indigo leaning color to it. Next, for first edition, I pulled out Vanity and Grapevine, which are two of the darkest purple kind of colors. Vanity is more of a true purple, but more red-toned, I guess, while Grapevine is a little bit more indigo leaning. So while Vanity does have these gold metallic flakes sprinkled in there, they're not as plentiful as what we see in first edition. Like, it's much more hollow forward. So again, I think since Grapevine has the closer undertone, I ended up doing a third coat to deepen the color and then add Compass on top, and I feel like it's kind of close. Then I also pulled out Nightshade, which was from the Thorns collection, and Starrely's Moon Jelly, which is a deep indigo jelly. Again, I have Nightshade in just the one coat, so you can see the undertone, which is a little bit warmer in comparison. So Moon Jelly is definitely closer to that more indigo color, but it is a little bit lighter. But if you do another coat and again add Compass on top, I feel like it looks like a perfect recreation. I also have a photo of Headliner from the Opening Night collection, which was the deep indigo, but again, that one has the iridescent flakes as opposed to a metallic copper color. So it is a little different in that way, but I would imagine the base colors are almost the same. And for some creams, I have Mooncat's Queen of Chaos, which is a much more warm-toned, deep purple. So I think the closest that I have to a deep indigo is Holo Taco's Indigo Away, which at first glance might look like, you know, an exact color match, but I think Holo Taco is just a little bit darker if we're being nitpicky, but it's definitely pretty close, especially if you only have creams in your collection. Putting Compass on top is, you know, a close enough attempt, but I don't think it beats the Starrily Moon Jelly comparison. I figured I could also compare first edition to Holo Taco's Smalt of the Earth and Hit the Lights. Like I mentioned before, Hit the Lights is a little bit more blue leaning, but it does have a similar value, though I would say Smalt of the Earth is closer color-wise. Then for Adaline, I pulled out Honeymoon from the Vineyard collection, which is just the jelly base with hollow flakes, and Dahlia from the Thorns collection. I actually figured Dahlia would be somewhat close because I remember that one being the lightest compared to the Thorns shades, where even on two coats you can still tell it's a deeper sort of burgundy red as opposed to a near black. But with doing two coats of each, I would say that Honeymoon is a bit closer, just slightly more more berry leaning in color, but Dahlia on that first coat looked pretty close, so I ended up just comparing it again to the 2 coats of Adaline, and you can see it's just so close. Like maybe if you do 1.5 coats of Dahlia, it would be an exact match. And for some photo comparisons, I have Bitten, which is a lot more red toned, like a blood red, vampy sort of shade. So I actually think the closer color would be Curtain Call from the opening night collection. Maybe that one's a little more pink leaning. And for some other dark, hot pink or magenta kind of jelly bases, I pulled out Starrily's Bloodbelly jelly and Crack's Sweeter the Juice, which between these two, I would say the Cracked is the closest, especially in terms of the undertone. Bloodbelly jelly is a little bit more red leaning, but Sweeter the Juice is still lighter, even though that's the darkest of their berry pink jellies. And here is Adaline next to Cirque's Bitten jelly, which in the bottle they look like they could be the exact same kind of color, but on the nail, because Bitten jelly is a lot more sheer, more of that true glassy jelly, it just looks a lot lighter in the 2 coats. Moving on to Overgrown, I pulled out ILNP's Countryside and Ski Lodge, which was one of their shades that was retired a few months ago. Such a shame because I am so in love with it. It is such a gorgeous color, and the good news is that the base color of Overgrown is pretty close to it. It's just kind of hard to tell because Ski Lodge has so much holo in it. And of course, I also have to show this next to Ivy, which was the dark green from the Thorns collection. I feel like at first glance, they have a similar look in the bottle. Maybe Ivy is just a little bit darker, but it was hard to see the difference in undertone, though on the first coat, you can see it better where Ivy has a little bit more of this blue-toned emerald color to it. Not that Overgrown is a yellow-toned green. I would say that one's just more neutral. But once you do the second coat, I feel like Ivy doesn't look that much different, especially once you have Compass on top. And for other dark greens, I have Mooncat's Monster Under Your Head, which I think is described as a deep olive green linear holo. And I also pulled out Holo Taco's Headhunter, which is just a cream, but close enough to being a dark hunter green, though maybe it's a little bit lighter or just slightly more muted. And here is Overgrown next to Holo Taco's Far From the Tree from the Holo Renaissance collection. Kind of similar vibes being these dark earthy green shades, but Holo Taco is a little bit lighter in the green color. And finally for Slow Burn, I pulled out Shapeshifter and initially pulled out Ginger Snap, which had that copper iridescent orange flaky, but obviously the base is too light. So on the nail, I ended up comparing Bear Hug, which is another darker brown base. I would say that one's a bit more neutral in its undertone, while Shapeshifter is even more red toned than Slow Burn is. But on 2 coats, it definitely looks the closest. It just has even more of those copper metallic flakes. And lastly, I have Mooncat's Stumped, which is their dark brown jelly base that has iridescent flakes, which are mainly gold and green with some flashes of orange, and also Holo Taco's Brownie Points, which is just a dark brown cream. And unfortunately, neither of these really compare, but maybe if you do a thin layer of Stumped over a darker brown, it would be close. And lastly for Slow Burn, I figured I could show it next to Holo Taco's Espresso Your Holo, which is their darkest brown specialty kind of finish. It's definitely dark enough that it looks almost black, so I figured it would be kind of close to Slow Burn because of that, but it has a much cooler undertone. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of ILNP's The Estate collection. These are going to be launching this Friday, July 31st, so I will have ILNP's website linked down below. They should be available for a discounted pre-order for the first couple of days before retailing for $12.50. Now, as far as my thoughts go, I really love these. Like, Don't get me wrong, I am still not anywhere near ready to embrace fall colors. I'm actually sweating right now, having, 2 layers. But as an October baby, I know that I'm biased when I say that fall is the best season. I just especially love it for nail polish collections because I just really love like the deep, rich, warm kind of colors. So having these jewel tones, a couple of dark neutrals, they are just so, so gorgeous, especially with how they're accented by those copper flakies, because if you're familiar with my channel, my videos, my favorites, you know that I've talked about ILNP's Compass before, which is the copper flake topper, and how I feel like it's such an underrated kind of topper compared to, the typical gold. It's just so nice to have a little bit warmth with a copper color. So I think it makes sense that these are pretty much up my alley, although I was a little bit nervous at first because historically this kind of, jelly, flaky sort of finish isn't always my favorite. It's kind of a hit or miss with depending on the collection. Like, I know it's crazy because these are popular, for other ILNP lovers, but I didn't really care for shades like Bitten or the Opening Night collection in general, but I did really love the Overcast collection and the After the Rain set that we got last fall. But funny enough, with Opening Night being one of my least favorites, I feel like there is a lot of overlap with these, especially with those darker sort of jewel tone kind of colors. But with Opening Night, it did have those iridescent flakes like Overcast or After the Rain instead of the metallic ones. So I'm not sure what it was exactly about that collection that I just didn't really love. Although, looking back on the swatches, I'm like, maybe I should have kept some of them. But yeah, anyway, sorry for that tangent. These I think are so gorgeous. I do really love them. I'm just not ready for fall. And I'm also not ready for more collections from ILNP just yet. Like, we just got a little bit of a break from their 4 summer releases a few weeks ago that were like released every other week. I really hope that they slow down for fall and we just get like, a scaled back release schedule. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way, but yeah, as far as these colors go, I just thought they were so, so beautiful. So make sure you let me know your thoughts down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you again to ILNP for sponsoring this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!